I know, here's the deal. I know this is an important issue. I know, especially being in the media, that this is something I ought to really care about. And I know that our listeners and our viewers ought to really care about this too, but I don't know why. Okay? So just break it down for us. Who are the good guys and who are the bad guys, first of all?
It depends, where you're sitting. So the Federal Communications Commission had these net neutrality rules, and these were a key piece of the Obama administration's goals and the Obama campaign. This is something that, they really pushed for. So these net neutrality rules back in the day, before January of this year, kept internet providers, your Comcast, your Verizon, your AT&T, those companies, from blocking or slowing access to certain websites. So, when Comcast, if you're a Comcast subscriber and you want to access Netflix is bandwidth heavy. It takes a lot to be able to access those video streams, especially in high definition. And, Comcast was not allowed to say, you know what, Netflix, you're too much. We're going to charge users more to get to you. They weren't allowed to do that, and they weren't allowed to slow down Netflix. And then in January, federal court overturned these rules. They said these rules, they're too broad. They treat internet providers like telephone companies, and traditionally telephone companies are just more heavily regulated. So the FCC has the daunting task of rewriting these rules. And I mean, everyone who cares about this stuff is watching very closely. And FCC Chairman Tom Wheeler announced last week that he's going to rewrite the rules that in a way that allows for internet fast lanes. That's kind of the term that's been thrown around a lot in the last week. So, if Comcast has to serve up Netflix, but maybe Comcast doesn't have to serve up Netflix in a, super well way. Maybe they can kind of slow it down or make it so that the user has to wait longer to watch it. And now Netflix can kind of go to them and they can work out a commercially reasonable agreement where Netflix pays a little more so that Comcast subscribers can get to Netflix faster.
What does it mean for the consumer?
Well, that remains to be seen. The argument goes that if Comcast charges Netflix more, Netflix will charge its users more. And that looks definitely possible. We saw Comcast and Netflix reach a similar agreement, a little bit different in terms of where along the network this agreement was. But they reached this agreement earlier this year, and then Netflix announced last week that they would be upping their subscription price by $1 or $2 for new subscribers. So people are really worried that if these content companies, Netflix, Google, Skype, anyone who provides bandwidth-heavy services, if they have to pay more to Comcast and Verizon, then maybe users will have to pay more.
I agree. I don't think that we hear a ton about this story, but the people that I do hear from, the advocates for net neutrality, this is their issue more than
I know
more than like other issues that people take on. Right? People say it's the death of the internet. What does it mean going beyond the Comcast Netflix thing? What could this lead to down the road that people are so adamant about?
So the worst case scenario is, Comcast gets to act as a gatekeeper. Comcast can say, you know what, we don't really like this website, so we're going to make it load really slowly when you try and load it, so that way you just navigate away from it because it's 2014, we're used to pulling up things in 2 seconds. We're not going to wait for a page to load. Comcast also owns NBC Universal, so they have a competing interest here. Netflix provides video content. Comcast provides video content. Comcast could say, in theory, we don't like the fact that Netflix is competing with us, so we want you to watch Comcast's content instead of Netflix's content. We're going to degrade this site.
Yeah.
That sucks. I mean, that's pretty messed up.
I mean, we're waiting to see what the rules exactly look like. We won't know until the May 15th meeting where the commission's going to vote to move forward with this rulemaking process. But those are the fears. Down the road, this could become these gatekeepers who decide what we watch and when.
And ideally, from a consumer point of view, right, what we want is easy, equal access to everything for free.
Yeah, well, once we pay our internet bill, we expect to kind of just get everything that we want to access that's lawful. I mean, obviously, there are things that are illegal online, but in terms of lawful content, you expect Netflix to load as quickly as YouTube, to load as quickly as any other site. You don't think like, oh, maybe my internet provider is slowing it down because they have a beef with Google, so they're not going to let this YouTube video load. And
under, just so I understand again, under the new FCC, so the new FCC rules are not out yet, right?
Not yet. May 15th. We'll see them.
Okay. But the chairman, they're either already written or they're still being written. But the chairman has indicated that I'm going to go along with some of these allowing some of these restrictions, correct?
Yes, he said he's open to commercially reasonable agreements, which means we'll have to wait to see what those agreements look like, what he decides that means.
Yeah. And doesn't that fly in the face of what Obama promised as a candidate?
That's definitely the argument a lot of people are making. People will point to statements he made during the 2008 campaign and in his early years as president, when he talked about not wanting these fast lanes, wanting the internet to be open and equal. And some people will say, well, this is a turnaround in policy. The FCC would reply that, this isn't a turnaround in policy. There was always some room for discrimination against internet traffic. This is just a more explicit endorsement.
And when the FCC, so is this all up to the FCC? They have total jurisdiction
They're an
here?
independent agency. They can kind of do, what they see fit. I mean, they do answer to Congress in terms of appropriations funding. And, there are many ways that Congress is looking to weigh in. I think it's interesting that everybody on the Hill is against this proposal.
Oh, really?
You have Democrats saying that you're, creating a tiered internet where if you can pay a lot, you get faster traffic. Users can access you faster. If you don't, if you're not deep pocketed, if you're a startup, if you're the next Netflix, then you can't pay for that fast lane. But you also have Republicans arguing that the FCC shouldn't even be trying to bring back these rules in the first place because they've been struck down by a federal court.
Mm-hmm.
They think this is just a fool's errand. So
yeah. So if the FCC rules this way, that's probably going to be the way it is, unless Congress passes some legislation to reverse it, right?
I mean, Congress could step in a number of ways, but it looks like this is the FCC's territory here. Chairman Wheeler said he wants this done by the end of the year because when these net neutrality rules got struck down in January, that removed any kind of net neutrality protection. Right now, they would say the internet is the Wild West. If Comcast wants to block something from you, they can because the FCC has no rules on the books preventing that. And so Wheeler said he wants to get this done quickly by the end of the year, have something up so that consumers are protected.
Does this have any relationship at all to the possible Comcast merger talks between
it
Comcast
always seems
and Time
to.
Warner now? Right.
So Comcast, when it bought NBC Universal in 2011, they agreed to this net neutrality principle, the rules that had been in place at the time. And those are in effect until 2018. And Comcast has said if it merges with Time Warner Cable, it will extend those net neutrality protections to all Time Warner Cable subscribers.
Yeah.
And so you could see people, maybe as Comcast looks to buy Time Warner Cable, the FCC could be putting on more conditions. Maybe you have to extend the net neutrality protections 5 years longer or stronger protections. We'll see what the agency does with that. But, this is definitely a piece in the system. It's all moving very quickly.
Yeah. Well, at least Al Franken is out there raising
Yes.
hell about it. Not many other people, but it for everybody who's not wired in these days, right? They ought to know about this, and they ought to be not just be aware of it, but beware of it. Let's go out to Madison, Wisconsin, and say a big good morning to Catherine. Hi, Catherine.
Well, I'm totally against it. I mean, this is the commons. This is some of the last of the commons. The infrastructure was developed a lot by the government, which makes it belong to the people. And handing the internet over to the commons, you're handing it over to the corporations. It's going to be a tiered network, and small news sites that I really depend on that have no corporate ties, like the Daily Kos, that happen to do much more in-depth reporting, are not going to be able to exist.
That's the fear. I mean, Catherine, you express it very well, and I've heard that from a lot of people, Kate. The commons, this is the commons, and it is, right, on the internet. I mean, people get on it and go anywhere. You can talk to anybody.
That's
You can access anything. You can watch anything. You can read anything. You can learn anything. So why should there be any barriers at all? And why wouldn't the FCC be taking that position?
Well, the FCC, it's all still in flux. This is just kind of the first step on this rulemaking.
Yeah, but they've indicated they're going to accept some controls, some limits, right?
Yeah.
Some barriers.
They would say that they're going to look at all these different fast lane agreements very closely and make sure they don't hurt consumers, make sure they're not anti-competitive, make sure they don't hurt the market. We won't know until May 15th what exactly that evaluation will look like under these proposed rules because it's just not public yet.
Right. But we seem to have an indication, though, that they're caving in.
Oh, this is definitely a step back from the former rules, which were stronger.
Mike in Chicago on WCPT. Hello, Mike.
Hi, thanks for taking my call.
Glad you're there.
Okay.
Sure.
Well, the loss of net neutrality, I think, really hurt entrepreneurs. I mean, let's say, just for example, Netflix is paying Comcast $10,000 a month, to stream their video. If I want to create a streaming video service, I'm a startup. I don't have very much money. I can't afford to pay those same fees. So, my signal, my bandwidth gets cut. No one goes to my site. Everyone pays with Netflix or Fox or whatever.
Well, isn't that true, Kate? I mean, right.
That's
so
the concern.
People, the people that have the big bucks will be able to get the access, and the people that don't, which again contradicts the spirit of the internet, doesn't it?
I mean, it definitely, it is a step back from what they've previously said about wanting to keep it open and not having these fast lanes. It's always kind of been a thing they didn't want, and now it looks like they're going to allow these fast lanes. I mean, the FCC says they want input from everyone, so you can file public comments, and there's going to be, this is a multi-step process, so there will be plenty of chances to weigh in, as a member of the public. But, Wheeler has kind of said where he wants to go with this, and it looks like, if you're the next Netflix and you can't afford this fast lane, you get the slower service.